Story number 1, Substation 22. I received the dispatch at 1900 hours on a Tuesday in late October. The call came through the standard emergency line, transformer fault at Substation 17, Eastern Montana. Population 0, 40 miles past the last town. I had worked that station twice before in the previous year. Both times the issues were routine: capacitor replacement, breaker recalibration. I expected the same. The drive took 2 hours through empty grassland. The road narrowed after the last gas station, then became a single lane of asphalt cutting through scrub and sage. I arrived at 21:15. The gate was open. The access log on the clipboard mounted beside the fence was unsigned. My supervisor's truck was parked outside the control room with the engine cold. I checked the hood. The metal was warm enough that I knew he had arrived within the last few hours. Standard procedure required me to check in by radio before entering the facility. I keyed the handset 3 times on all assigned frequencies. I received only static. I waited 5 minutes and tried again. Same result. I documented the time and the failed communication attempt on my own clipboard, then proceeded inside. The control room was lit by the standard overhead panels. The air smelled like transformer oil and dust. My supervisor's clipboard was on the desk beside the main monitoring station. His handwriting was precise, methodical. The maintenance log showed entries dated that day, progressing through the afternoon. The last entry was at 21:32. It read, "Primary transformer bank responding to load test. Anomalous frequency signature noted at." The sentence ended there. The pen lay across the page. I checked the monitoring displays. All transformer banks were operating within normal parameters. Voltage steady. Current distribution normal. Load balanced. But I heard the electrical hum that fills every substation, and something about it was wrong. The sound had a rhythmic quality, almost like a pulse, inconsistent with the steady 60 Hertz alternating current that should have been constant. I stood still and listened. The rhythm was regular. It seemed to slow slightly, then accelerate, then slow again. I followed protocol and began the shutdown sequence. I moved through the checklist: isolation of primary feeds, verification of secondary circuits, manual disconnect of the transformer banks. Each step took 2 to 3 minutes. The hum continued. I finished the shutdown at 21:51. The primary power was cut. The transformer banks should have been inert. The hum did not stop. I heard footsteps on the catwalk above me. The metal grating creaked under weight. I looked up. The catwalk was empty. I waited. The footsteps did not repeat. I checked the maintenance log again. No entry indicating anyone else was scheduled. I radioed again. Static. I moved toward the transformer yard door. The yard was flooded with sodium lights that turned everything the color of old bone. I opened the door and stepped outside. My supervisor was standing in the center of the yard, approximately 30 feet from where I stood. He was facing away from me, motionless, his gaze directed toward the transformer insulators. His shadow stretched across the concrete in the wrong direction. The light source was behind him, but his shadow pointed backward toward the building where I stood. I watched the shadow. It did not move. I called his name. He did not respond. I called again. He remained still. I violated containment protocol. I did not complete the shutdown verification. I did not file an incident report from the site phone. I turned and walked back into the control room, locked the door behind me, and left the facility. I drove back toward town at a speed that required me to focus entirely on the road. My supervisor was found at a rest stop 70 miles south the following morning. He was sitting in the parking area, conscious but unresponsive. A state police officer brought him to the regional hospital. He had no memory of the previous 36 hours. Medical examination found no injury, no signs of sedation, no neurological damage. His blood work was clean. He was released after observation and placed on administrative leave pending review. I was called to a meeting with my supervisor's supervisor and a representative from the regional office. I provided a written account of the dispatch, the drive, my arrival, and the failed radio communication. I did not mention the footsteps. I did not mention the hum that continued after shutdown. I did not mention what I saw in the transformer yard. I stated that I had become concerned for my supervisor's safety and had left the facility to seek assistance from town. This was technically accurate. The substation was reclassified as automated only. Remote monitoring was installed. No field personnel were assigned to routine maintenance. Any future issues would be handled by technicians from the regional hub, who would attend the site only if remote diagnostics indicated a critical failure. I was reassigned to urban distribution work. I was instructed to surrender my field notes from Substation 17, which I did after making this copy. The original was collected by the regional office representative. I was told the matter was closed and that further discussion of the incident was not appropriate. My supervisor returned to work 6 weeks later. He did not remember me. He did not remember the substation. When I saw him in the break room, he looked at me the way he might look at a stranger. I did not attempt to speak with him about what had happened. The incident has been archived under restricted classification. My reassignment is permanent. I have not returned to that station or any station in that county. The file is closed. Story number 2, Holding Area 5. I arrived at the temporary detention facility outside Laredo on Saturday evening to cover a weekend shift for Marcus, who had called in sick that afternoon. The facility was a converted warehouse complex operated under federal contract, designed to hold up to 200 detainees in temporary status pending processing or transfer. I had worked there 4 times before. The routine was predictable intake documentation, welfare checks on existing detainees every 2 hours, meal service coordination, and incident logging. I expected to complete the shift without incident. The facility was quiet when I clocked in at 18:30 hours. The evening supervisor, Patricia, briefed me on the current population. 137 detainees distributed across 4 blocks. No medical alerts. No disciplinary issues. She handed me the duty roster and left at 1900 hours. I was alone with 2 security officers and a nurse on call. I began my first round at 1930, moving through Block A and Block B without noting anything unusual. At 1955, I entered Block C to conduct the standard welfare check. The detainees were in their cells, most lying on bunks or sitting quietly. I moved down the corridor, counting heads, checking for visible injuries or signs of distress. Detainee 7 was seated against the rear wall of his cell, knees drawn up, arms resting on his legs. His name was redacted in my initial notes, and I have no reason to revisit that detail now. He was facing the wall. When I passed his cell, I noted the time, 1957, and made a standard notation, alert, responsive posture. I completed the round and returned to the control station. At 20:35, I conducted my second round. Detainee 7 had not moved. Same position, same orientation. I noted this and continued. At 20:50, I passed his cell again. Still motionless. At 20:58, I made the decision to approach the cell directly. I unlocked the cell door. Detainee 7 remained in position. I asked if he required medical attention. He turned his head toward me slowly. His eyes did not follow the movement of his head. They remained fixed at a point somewhere behind my left shoulder, approximately 6 feet from where I stood. Then he began speaking. His voice was steady and even, a monotone that did not fluctuate. But his lips were not synchronized with the sound. The words came from his mouth, but the timing was off by roughly half a second. I do not have a record of what he said. I did not transcribe it. The language was not English, Spanish, or any dialect I recognized from my training briefings. I instructed him to remain seated and withdrew from the cell. I called the on-call nurse, Sarah Chen, to conduct a medical assessment. She arrived within 8 minutes. I waited outside the cell while she examined him. She checked his vitals, asked him standard orientation questions, and observed his responsiveness. She reported normal blood pressure, normal heart rate, normal oxygen saturation. He answered her questions appropriately. She noted in her report that she felt unusually cold during the examination, though the facility temperature was set to 68 degrees and had not fluctuated. She cleared him as medically stable and left at 21:30. At 22:40, I conducted my third round. Detainee 7 remained in his original position. At this point, I had documented the behavior in the incident log, but had not escalated it. I should have escalated it. That is noted in my review. At 23:15, I was conducting my fourth round when I observed Detainee 12 in Block B seated in an identical posture against his rear wall. Same position. Same fixed gaze. When I approached, he began speaking in the same monotone voice, with the same lip sync delay. Different words, but the same cadence. The same unrecognized language. I called Sarah Chen again. Same results, normal vitals, unusual cold sensation, medical clearance. At 00:30, Detainee 4 in Block D exhibited the same behavior. At 01:15, Detainee 9 in Block A. 4 detainees, distributed across all 4 blocks, adopting identical posture and speech patterns within 3 hours. I escalated to the facility supervisor on call, which was a recorded line to a regional office. I reported the incidents using standard codes for behavioral anomaly and potential contamination event. The supervisor instructed me to isolate the affected individuals per protocol and maintain documentation. I moved each of the 4 detainees to separate isolation cells in the medical wing, which was equipped with individual monitoring. At 01:50, I reviewed the security camera footage for Block C to verify the timeline of Detainee 7's behavior. The timestamp showed 01:50. The cell was empty. I checked the footage again. The cell had been empty since approximately 200 hours. I checked the footage for Block B, Block D, and Block A. All 4 cells showed as empty during the exact timestamps when I had personally observed and documented the detainees in those cells. I did not report this discrepancy to the regional supervisor. I should have, I did not. At 01:55, I conducted a visual check of the 4 isolation cells. All 4 detainees were present, seated on the medical wing bunks, eyes open, unresponsive to verbal stimulus. At 0200 hours, I observed all 4 detainees simultaneously stand and walk to their cell doors. They did not open the doors. They simply stood facing the doors, motionless, in perfect synchronization. I made the decision to initiate facility-wide lockdown without supervisor authorization. I activated the emergency protocol, which sealed all cell blocks and initiated continuous monitoring. This was outside my authority. I did not request approval. By 0300 hours, the 4 detainees had returned to their bunks and appeared to be sleeping. At 0400 hours, I conducted a welfare check. All 4 were responsive, alert, and reported no memory of the night. They had no recollection of being moved to isolation. They had no recollection of standing at the cell doors. When I asked them what they remembered, they reported normal sleep. I documented their responses and cleared them for return to standard housing. I completed my incident report at 0500 hours using classification codes that flagged the documentation for administrative review rather than standard processing. I did not include the security camera discrepancy. I did not include the unauthorized lockdown decision. I did not include the lip sync delay or the unrecognized language. I included only the observable facts. 4 detainees exhibited unusual behavior. Medical assessment showed no abnormality. Behavior resolved spontaneously. No injuries or incidents. I was reassigned to a facility in Corpus Christi the following Monday. I was instructed to surrender my personal notes regarding the weekend shift, which were logged as part of a routine quality assurance review. I complied. I have no copies of those notes. The temporary detention facility outside Laredo was decommissioned within 30 days. The detainees were transferred through channels I was not cleared to access. The facility was returned to the property owner. I have not been asked to provide additional documentation or testimony regarding the incident. The file has been archived and closed. Story number 3, Dispatch Override. I was supervising the overnight shift at the Regional Dispatch Center when the call came in at 2:30, 7 in the morning. A woman, voice steady but tight, reported that her husband had not returned from an evening drive on Forest Service Road 41. She had expected him back by midnight. It was now past 2 in the morning. I took the details. Male, 50, 4 years old, blue Subaru Outback, familiar with the road, no known medical conditions. I logged it as a standard welfare check and dispatched a county unit. The road was remote but well maintained, and the weather report showed clear skies. There was nothing in the initial report that suggested anything beyond a delayed return. The deputy radioed back 18 minutes later. He had located the vehicle at a pullout approximately 8 miles up the road. The engine was running. The headlights were on. The driver's door was open. There was no sign of the occupant. I acknowledged and initiated search protocols. I requested a K-9 unit from the county kennel, approximately 35 minutes out. I instructed the deputy to establish a perimeter and wait for backup before entering the surrounding forest. The K-9 unit arrived at 4 o'clock. The handler was experienced. I had worked with her before on 2 previous missing persons cases. The dog was a German Shepherd, well-trained, reliable. The handler led the dog from the vehicle toward the tree line. According to the deputy's radio report, the dog approached the forest edge, then stopped. The handler encouraged it forward. The dog became agitated. It pulled back, whining. The handler attempted twice more. The third time, the dog refused to move at all and began showing signs of distress. The handler withdrew the dog and reported that she had never seen the animal react that way. I acknowledged and told them to stand by. At 4:15 in the morning, the deputy reported hearing a voice calling from the forest. He said it was the missing man's voice, calling his own name. I asked for clarification. The deputy said the voice was coming from multiple directions simultaneously. He said it was repeating the same 3 words. I asked which 3 words. He did not answer immediately. Then he said the voice was saying, "Come back now." I instructed all units to hold position and not to enter the forest. I attempted to contact the state police to request additional resources. Every outbound line produced only silence despite showing connected status on the system. I tried 3 times. All 3 times, the same result. At 4:32, the deputy's radio transmissions became distorted. There was static underneath his voice, but not the normal kind. It sounded like multiple voices speaking underneath his words. I asked him to repeat. He said he was still at the pullout. He said the voice in the forest had changed. He said it was no longer calling the missing man's name. I asked what it was saying now. His response was fragmented. I heard the word walking. I heard it again. Then again, I asked the deputy to clarify his position. He did not respond to that question. He repeated the word walking 3 more times at intervals that did not match human speech patterns. The spacing was wrong. The timing was mechanical. I instructed all units to hold position and maintain radio silence except for status checks. I attempted again to reach state police. The lines remained open but silent. I logged the time as 4:39 in the morning. I noted that all outbound communications were experiencing technical difficulties. I did not note what I was actually hearing on the deputy's frequency. At 5:51 in the morning, all radio contact ceased. The frequency went dead. I attempted to re-establish contact with the deputy's unit. No response. I attempted to reach the K9 handler. No response. I was preparing to escalate when the missing man's wife called back. She said her husband had just walked through the front door. He was home. He had no memory of the previous 6 hours. He could not explain how he had returned. He did not remember driving on Forest Service Road 41. He did not remember stopping at the pullout. He said the last thing he remembered was leaving his house at 6:30 in the evening. I asked her to keep him available for questioning and told her I would send someone to the residence. I did not send anyone. The deputy called back at 6:17 in the morning. His voice was normal. He said the forest had gone quiet. He said the vehicle was still at the pullout with the engine running. He said there was no sign of disturbance. I instructed him to secure the vehicle and return to the station. He did. I filed the incident under Administrative Code 7J, and submitted it for review. During my exit interview 3 days later, I was instructed to attribute all communications irregularities to equipment malfunction. A technician had found a damaged relay in the main transmitter. That explained the silence on the outbound lines. That explained the distortion on the deputy's frequency. I was told that the missing man's return was consistent with disorientation and temporary amnesia, common in cases of prolonged stress. I was told that the K9 unit's behavior was likely a response to unfamiliar scents in the forest. I was told that Forest Service Road 41 was being closed for seasonal maintenance. This was standard procedure. The closure was permanent. The deputy transferred to a coastal district 3 weeks later. He did not request the transfer. I did not ask him why he accepted it. The K9 handler retired 6 months after the incident. The missing man's wife sent a letter stating that her husband had experienced no further episodes. I filed the letter and did not respond. The incident was classified and archived. No further investigation was warranted. The file was